Welcome friends to another r/entitled parents video. Today we've got a story of an insane yelling mom. But first a story from Golden Wraith 02, entitled Parents Mistreating Their Kid, I think? Let me introduce myself. I'm a 16-year-old male with 4 siblings, all younger than me and married parents who I find rather entitled. So since I got into my last 2 years of high school at a new school, my life became a big struggle. I reunited with my primary school best friend and we hang out a lot, which my parents basically don't like. They find him a narco, he doesn't use drugs, an alcoholic, he doesn't drink much, and they say he does a certain German ruler's actions just because he calls when I suddenly stop messaging. And every time they do this, I get angry and an argument erupts. When I was getting beaten, I never had the guts to disagree. This stopped when I was like 14. They would say I never helped them with chores and that I only care about myself and my who are friends, which I find rather funny, as I used to say I would murder to protect my family. I had an internship a year ago and made my first money due to working hard for the place I had an internship at. I gave my money to my parents as we don't have much money and thought my parents would finally get respect for me, but I was mistaken. I was forced to help my mom with a small but annoying job, bringing around advertisements for $10. And they expected that I bought everything I wanted for those $10 every 2 weeks, like getting a haircut and stuff, which was impossible if I wanted to have something else than bread for lunch at school. When I asked my parents if I could have money for a haircut and I would pay them back, I was called the German ruler and a slave owner for demanding money, while they were the ones asking for money by my grandma all the time, which my grandma hates but still does. When I had to go to the doctor because I bruised my hand or my knee hurted badly, I had to go myself. Yet my siblings are almost carried to the doctor. My siblings are rather spoiled. My little brother is pretty aggressive and never gets disciplined correctly. He broke 2 tablets, 1 phone, a laptop, and a TV, which all were just forgiven. Everything but the TV was replaced. The TV's pretty recent. And this is the same case by one of my sisters who poured water over my laptop, which I actually needed for college if I passed my exams, which I didn't hear yet. My siblings always get what they want without working for it, and I had to beg my parents for years for an ID card because I needed one. I had to work for it or wait a long time, which, knowing I didn't have the patience to save $80 4 months for an ID, so I waited, thinking it'll take a few months to wait, but yet again I was mistaken. I had to wait for a year with constant yelling and mental abuse because I can't be home all the time to babysit my siblings for free. And now they're saying they'll kick me out at 18 due to me always disrespecting them and never doing what they ask. Heck, I even paid my phone back to my mom when it broke, having to do that advertisement job for another 3 months. Now they're saying that I should get a job when I don't even have a bank account. The advertisement thing was on my mom's bank account. That's why I only saw $20 a month instead of the full payment. And they're demanding that if I get a job and live under their roof, I must pay them $50 a month. Like, I want to go no contact ASAP, but I can't because of them keeping me on the leash. I can't even go for a walk without their permission, or I get scolded and yelled at for 4 hours long. Like, I'm actually embarrassed to go into the grocery store with my mom because if a cashier takes too long, she starts acting like she's very busy and starts saying toxic stuff like, "Didn't know they had lazy people here, OP would fit here perfectly," while I'm literally there. One time my mom was waiting for a cashier who wasn't the best at counting and kept messing up. So eventually she finished and my mom goes like, "Finally, it wasn't hard, was it?" And then she asked something, which I don't remember what it was, and due to this being in the pandemic, it wasn't easy to hear stuff in a crowded place if someone was wearing a mask. So the girl asked what she was saying twice, and my mom starts acting like the girl's stupid, saying that she doesn't speak Chinese and it's not hard to listen, again pulling me into the convo by saying I can't listen either. So I get annoyed, and once my mom packed her groceries and basically was leaving already, I apologized to the girl, knowing that my mom heard it. And the girl gave my remaining money because nobody deserves to be treated like she was treated by my mom. I want to apologize for my messed up storytelling. I had to get this off my chest due to literally just getting yelled at and having a slight anxiety attack. You just can't help but feel bad for OP in a situation like this, and you want everything to turn out better for them. Being able to have an outlet like sharing the story and kind of venting about things is good, especially if venting kind of relieves some of that steam. But man, I just wish OP can get out of that situation as soon as possible and be able to start saving for themselves, doing things for themselves, and not have to live under the constant pressure of these abusive parents. Would you guys agree with me that the first thing OP should do would be to get a bank account of their own that's very protected, either by a catchphrase or a password or anything like that? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Our next story is from Reasonable Path 1321, entitled Dad Annoying I Wasn't Ecstatic to Hear From Him. My dad, male 57, and I, female 24, have had a strained relationship for a few years. 4 years ago, I introduced him to my boyfriend, and Dad was drinking in secret, got maggoted at like 2 p.m. and thought I wouldn't notice, just so everyone has some idea of what I'm dealing with, then never apologized and opened up and cried once after I spent the year largely ignoring him. Didn't actually acknowledge what he did wrong, but was more just upset I wasn't buying his crap anymore. Today I got a call from him. He's been woeful recently, struggled with lockdowns, and ensured he alienated everyone who could stand to be around him through the process. Me, my brother, male 21, and my sister, female 15, can't really stand him at the moment. He's a single parent to my 15-year-old sister, who is admittedly a handful due to it being that age, and him being pretty awful with her, so they have little rapport. He can be difficult to get along with if you aren't into mid-90s rock, evening ABC, or sports. My sister's been on the heavier side, and he would comment about it a lot. She's also very much a part of the younger culture that has a big focus on mental health, and Dad would always tell her she was faking it for attention. So as you all can imagine, that was a really fun and stable upbringing. My dad follows his mom and dad's parenting style. His mom was a nasty alcoholic, and his dad, ex-Marine and completely void of any tools for communicating with people, and had PTSD. My dad has lied about things my sister's done to absolve himself and excuse his reaction, and then never admitted to it even when he was caught out. For example, he once refused for my sister to cook dinner and called her cooking crap. I got mad and asked why he said that, and he told me she was trying to cook him celery and minced pasta. I took this back to my sister, and she confirmed he was lying and knew it was a normal bolognese. I asked him about it, and he denied ever telling me it was anything different to a bolognese, but still maintained it was crap. It wasn't. She made it for me that week, and it was great. He gets maggoted and picks fights with my sister, thanks Grandma, and is just in general too strict at the wrong moments, and then not strict enough when it really matters. Anyway, my dad like 2 weeks ago called me and was telling me about how he's moving to work part-time because his second job's parenting a teenager. Now this is an issue because 1, he doesn't do much parenting beyond the laundry, 2, she's at school during the day and often won't come home anyway, will be working or at a friend's place, 3, he's struggling for money, which is one of the biggest reasons he's so miserable all the time. He has no assets due to bad business choices and never moved beyond being a waiter that can barely hold down a job due to the amount of drinking he does at work. So he's telling me it's so difficult to parent that he needs to work part-time. I tell him to not use my sister as an excuse and admit it's for health or mental health or whatever. I didn't care if he needed to work less, but I thought it was self-indulgent to pretend it's for altruistic, I'm a great parent reasons. I then highlighted that my mom, not related to my sister, raised both me and my brother single-handedly while working full-time the entire time we were at school. He made some nasty comment about how she didn't really do that much and just generally downplayed the effort she put into making sure me and my brother were well looked after. He was a weekend parent at most. I got pissed and told him to shove it. Hadn't spoken since. Got a call today. Pick up the phone, just generally dreading the convo because he will say something dumb or rude. I wasn't overly enthusiastic, but I wasn't nasty. I know the drill with my dad. He pisses you off and then waits 3 weeks and expects you to forget it, so I do because it's easier. So I was just trying to get through to the convo. Dad picks up on my tone after a couple of minutes of small talk and says how it didn't feel like I was coming back to him. I laugh and say I wasn't exactly keen for the call. He then says, "Well, why didn't you tell me to call you back in a couple of weeks?" I laugh again as he seems to think time will solve his issues and generally doesn't have any other solutions. I don't really say anything. I just stutter and am just generally looking for a way out of the convo, as I knew this would happen. He then snarkily asks, "What, are you off your rocker or something?" Now I'm pissed. Want to call me crazy for not being super keen to speak to you? I was crazy for bothering to answer the call. I didn't go off, I just again laughed at him and said, "One of us is, but I don't think it's me." He got mad and disconnected the call. Can't wait to do this all again in 3 weeks. Why can't we have well-adjusted parents? My mom's part of the QAnon cult, yet my dad still takes the cake for most annoying parent. Impressive stuff, Dad. The bar was low, and yet you find a way. As much as it sucks, I think time is the ultimate answer here, and not in the sense that it will fix anything, but cutting them off and just not giving them the time is really the answer, unless they're going to show any kind of displayed effort of trying to improve themselves, apologize, make up for anything. Frankly, the time spent otherwise is probably just wasted. By the way, if you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below so you never miss any of my daily videos. Our next story is from You Know Who 2016. I would much rather ask for forgiveness than permission. My wife and I have a pretty nice backyard. It takes a lot of work to maintain it, but it pays off because we all love sitting out there and looking at our backyard as we eat meals at our kitchen table. Recently, we heard voices coming from the backyard. I went out to investigate what the issue was, and there were a bunch of people doing a senior high school picture session in our backyard. There were 6 high schoolers total among the others present. As I approached them, I asked them what they thought they were doing. The one woman barely even glanced at me, dismissively saying that we had such a beautiful yard and would make for great senior pictures. It turns out it was our neighbor from across the street that I'd never met face to face. Just the polite waves as you drive by each other. Let me tell you, it was a less than stellar first impression. They made no effort to move, further engage in conversation, nor leave my property. They simply stopped talking to me, continued giving each other pose directions, and continued snapping pictures. I just stood there for a moment, stunned. As they started walking around me to set up in a new position by our pond, I snapped out of it and I made it clear that I was none too fond of them trespassing on my property. To which she said, and I quote, "I would much rather ask for forgiveness than permission." It wasn't just the fact that she said it, it wasn't how she said it was the fact that she said it multiple times while I was making it clear I wasn't happy with them being there. After getting frustrated with the conversation going nowhere, I coldly quipped back, "That doesn't work so well when the owner has a gun." The last time, she said it and walked back inside to speak to my wife regarding how much of a deal we wanted to make about this. Well, we were on the same page. We had to make sure this neighbor knew she was not welcome to just trespass in our yard whenever she wanted, especially our backyard. I walked back outside to confront them again to make them leave, but they were already gone. I guess my comment and demeanor hit home and made them feel like it was a good idea to leave. I know, not a great ending to the story. This story could have ended a lot of different ways, but I will happily accept an ending where it didn't escalate into a big confrontation and they simply left. We haven't caught them in our backyard again, but that doesn't mean she won't try again or won't just wait until we leave. Needless to say, this is definitely one of the classic examples of, if you don't have cameras in that backyard, it is time to get some. Specifically some motion tracking ones if you can, ones that'll alert you if they detect something worthwhile moving on camera. Our next story is from Neo McCreations, entitled "Mother Has Absolutely No Idea How Money Works." This is being written by a bystander. This currently does not affect me, but I've got a funny feeling it may someday. First, let me set the stage. We have entitled Mother, entitled Mother's sister, not entitled son, and not entitled brother. Entitled Mother's husband passed away just over a decade ago. Entitled Mother has spent her entire life like this, and somehow her 2 offspring have incredible work ethics and have become both incredibly successful in life. Now on to the story, which has several parts. What I'm most looking for is advice when this problem inevitably grows and starts affecting even more people than it already has. The root issue is that entitled mother has absolutely zero concept of how money works and thinks that no matter what she does, money will just reappear in her bank account. She also has this absolute obsession with manipulating people and giving away gifts all the time to people, even people she doesn't know. Entitled Mother has basically never worked. She was an RN at one point in time, but quickly gave that up to become a stay-at-home mom for her and her husband's 3 kids. The husband was very tough on his kids, so to some extent, she ended up playing good cop and letting a lot of things slide. Early in their marriage, Entitled Mother wound up with credit cards, and her husband discussed budgeting and safe spending habits. They were starting a family, and despite Entitled Mother's husband having a good job, they needed to make sure they could provide for their new family. A month later, Entitled Mother's husband finds out she already maxed the credit card. He confronted her, to which she acted upset. Past that point, he confiscated her credit cards and started giving her an allowance so he could better reel her in. Up until he passed away a decade ago. Entitled Mother's husband ran a much stricter household in terms of finances. He did the bills, handled the allowances for her, and basically ran the household. Here's the issue though. Now that Entitled Mother's kids are grown, you'd have thought they would have learned her games and tried to fend her off, right? Wrong. Very, very wrong. Not Entitled Son and Not Entitled Brother grew up in the Northeast. An Entitled Mother and her husband ended up buying a vacation home down south so they could get away from the cold. This became their permanent residence close to when Entitled Mother's husband's health started declining. Eventually, this house ended up becoming her inheritance, along with, I believe, most of his money. On his deathbed, he made both of his sons, Not Entitled Son and Not Entitled Brother, promise that they would take care of Entitled Mother and just let her live in this blissful ignorance until she joins them in heaven one day. They took this literally. Somehow, Entitled Mother managed to shred through his entire retirement in 10 years. Now, of course, I don't know exactly how much he'd saved for retirement, but based on conversations and her spending habits, it had to have been close to 7 digits. All of a sudden, Not Entitled Son decided to check in and found out she was down to her last $40,000. He was absolutely stunned and had no idea what to do, so he sought out legal advice. This is a basic summary of the advisor's plan. 1. Have her sell the house. It's a huge house on a plot of land worth a lot of money. 2 floors. She has bad knees. Plus, it's uninsured because of how out of code the place is. 2. Have her move to a nice condo or apartment with the money. 3. Take over her finances. But Not Entitled Brother and Not Entitled Son decided they didn't want to take over her finances. They had a long talk with her, and she broke down sobbing and crying, saying it wasn't fair and they didn't know what they were talking about. In the end, they decided to just let her be. Now, it's about 1 year later, and we're positive she's out of money and won't tell anyone. Her sister, Entitled Mother's sister, accidentally let slip that she was actually paying Entitled Mother about $1,000 a month of her own money, coupled with Entitled Mother's Social Security to try to stop her from burning out of the money. Despite all this, we know she's close to being out. So what can be done? Obviously, someone needs to take control of her finances, but she refuses to sell the home and is 100% accepting free government handout money and care packages from her sister and her sons. Frankly, I think if somebody goes and blows through that amount of money, they're probably too far gone. Like, how can you possibly save somebody from that? Unless you have the time and the interest to sit there and babysit their finances, or at least pay somebody else to do so anyways, then it seems pretty apparent that they're going to squander every dollar they have. Our next story is from RXSPIIR. Can't wait to get away from them. Firstly, I'll say I didn't have a terrible childhood. I did get the occasional whipping, usually for a bad grade, and it was definitely enough for me to close myself off a lot. Not only to them, but to any close relationships that have tried to form between me and anyone really. I'm in college and I do have to rely on them somewhat, but before I ever ask for anything, I have the conversation in my head, envision all possible outcomes, most usually negative, and end up putting off the call or question for days, not wanting to face it. I can only tell the good news, that I'm making good grades, landed an internship, etc. Not that I barely eat once a day, or that I'm suffering from depression. For reference, I'm black, so that conversation would never happen anyways because what are you sad about? Once I do, if ever, find the courage to call for something I need or can't afford with my part-time job, it's either okay or an entire lecture about how lazy I am because I opted for only one job and not two while I go to school, and that I still act like a child. Meanwhile, they keep my 21-year-old dropout brother, 1 year younger than me, fed well and do whatever he needs without much question. He doesn't have any mental or physical issues, he just takes advantage of it, I guess. I just can't wait until I graduate and can survive without them. I go to a relatively good school, and surprise, I'm surrounded by the exact opposite. People's parents practically throw money at them and come to see them, actually care about their well-being, the good and the bad. I hate that I even have to go home to them sometimes. It starts out good, I'm happy to see them, and they me, but eventually it gets into questions about what I plan to do after graduating, and that I surely won't be allowed back here if I don't have a job lined up. I wasn't able to get a job for the first year or so of college, and they assume it'll be the same once I get my degree. They can't seem to grasp that the modern world isn't as easy as walking into the nearest corp and getting a job. I'm just exhausted. I definitely feel for OP in this situation, and frankly I hope being able to post about it and share this story is kind of a way for them to vent about their feelings and maybe let a little bit of that steam off. I just hope OP can stay on that grind both in work and in school, and manage to pull themselves into a situation where they don't have to feel reliant on people who frankly don't treat them the way they deserve. Our next story is from Feeling Froggy, officially an orphan. So it happened sooner than I thought it would, but what can you do? I'm officially an adult orphan. While I didn't like my mother nor respect her, heck, I don't think I even loved her honestly, I still always thought I would at least cry or be somewhat sad when the time came. But I'm not. I haven't cried since I got the call. It shocked me honestly how nonchalantly I've handled this situation. And please don't tell me the hate I'm feeling is unnatural or unhealthy. I know already. Every time I feel my sadness grow, it's not for her, it's for me. It's selfish. I am selfish, just like she was. My month is dead, and I can only think about how much extra stress this will be for me. Me, the daughter of my least favorite person, the adult orphan, the hateful girl who can only feel sadness about her mother's death when she's making it about herself. My whole life, she's made everything about herself. The first time my father hit me, all she could say was, "Why can't you see how difficult this is for me?" And now I'm making her death about me. My worst fears coming true. I'm just like her. I'm quite an emotional person. Just last week I cried because the cutest little girl called me pretty in Walmart. But I cannot for the life of me get myself to cry. My friends are waiting for my tears with open arms and supporting smiles. They're treating me like I'm fragile. They keep their hearts open for the tears of a girl who's crying for her mother, and I have nothing to give them. I remain calloused, still, even though I shouldn't. I cried when my father died. A man who hit me just because he could. Maybe that's because I was just so young? Back then, I still believed he loved me. Maybe I was just young enough to think that I still needed him? I don't know. Why can I not cry for her though? Why can I not care? A bit of background for the story is OP's mom hooked up with their sister's husband, so their brother-in-law, and I believe they eloped, and upon OP's growing up, obviously some awful things happened as they detailed. This is another situation you just can't help but feel bad for OP for, and frankly, even though the feelings may seem confusing or twisted, I feel like considering the upbringing and what OP had to deal with, you kind of understand why OP feels the way they do. I think the important thing to keep in mind is not all people are alike, and grieving I think is a very big variable upon people. Some people might have waterfalls while others may not shed a single tear, but they may still grieve. They may feel different things or grieve in different ways. I think everybody's very much different in that regard. Our next story is from Ghost75790X. Was I a slave? I, 39-year-old male, am currently sat on my sofa, drinking heavily, reflecting on my life, and made a startling revelation. From the moment I left school and found employment, I had to give my entire paycheck to my dad. This meant I had no money to save, so I couldn't move out, no money to enjoy a night out with my friends, and no money for myself. When I got hurt at work and mangled my knee, my entire compensation payout went straight to my dad. I never even got to see the check. My dad used my money to start a small delivery business. I did all the work, he collected the money. I never got paid. He would brag to our clients that he paid me £50 a day, but he was lying his butt off to make himself look good in their eyes. When he passed, he didn't have insurance and I was left with nothing because all the money I had left was spent on his funeral. I lost the family home, my business, and most of my possessions just to afford a cheap apartment. 10 years later, I'm finally back on my feet, but I'll probably live alone for the rest of my life because I'm terrified that I'll be just like him if I ever found someone. So, was I a slave? A little more about my dad. His parents were also controlling, especially his mother, so much so that they wanted him to stay with his abusive wife who used him and cheated on him. He eventually ran away to the RAF for a decade where he was a military policeman. He learned how to get into people's heads and mess with their brains, a skill he used in his parenting and second marriage to my mother. She was a victim too. He also had a very expensive education and had a high IQ. This meant that he was the smartest man on the planet. We were all too stupid to question him, and he made the decisions. We lived in abject poverty our whole lives, and he lost our home twice with his brilliant decision-making. For the people who asked, why didn't I run? Simple. I had nowhere to go, and I would have left my mother alone with him. She was more broken by him than I was. Neither of us had any willpower and were brainwashed by his BS. She passed 4 months after him. Years after I saw a therapist, it helped me open my eyes, made me realize that I was worth something, that I actually had a higher IQ than my dad. That really surprised me. I liked being alone because nobody could tell me what to do or how to live my life. It's my safe space. Obviously, I need more therapy and I'll get that sorted. I became disabled a few years ago and had to stop working. I'm now on full disability benefits, and ironically, I've never had it so good. For the first time in my life, I have savings and I don't need to worry about money. I have life insurance for the first time ever, and despite being in constant pain and having reduced mobility, I've never been happier because I can finally live for me. Ultimately, I don't know about OP's overall question, but they were definitely hurt financially and emotionally. And as OP continues to work through things, I hope things continue to look up for them. And our final story of the day is from Cheeto Dust 74. My mom yells at me in my own home. 2 days ago, my mom came back home. She lives in my house from her walk, and she's hungry, so she went to the fridge and tried to make herself food as she was hungry. Recently, Ontario had a huge storm, and on the street I live on, my power was out for a long time because of damages. I got the power back on yesterday. Anyways, so she tried to make herself food, but not only was a lot of it my food that I cooked myself and bought, I had a full fridge of cold cuts and a pantry full of bread, so my mom could have easily have made something, but she didn't want to. So as I was repairing my circuit box, which was damaged because of water getting to the basement, she came down and was like, "Hey OP, can you make some food for your mother?" And I said sure when I'm done repairing this. She insisted I drop everything and make her a sandwich and coffee, but I said no because I was still repairing. So she got extremely mad at me and called me a witch because I don't care for my mother. And so I basically just went back to doing repairs and she got very upset. So she went to McDonald's and got herself food. When she came back later, I still wasn't done, so like 30 minutes later I finished repairing and the power was back on, and I went to get myself some water, and there was my mom saying, "I didn't get you anything because you're an unappreciative son of a witch." I told her don't call me that, and if she continues, she can get the heck out of my house. She started calling me a son of a witch, that I didn't appreciate her birthing me, and she should be able to own my house because she gave birth to me. So, when she was done, I went back upstairs to take a shower, and she texted me that she's going to stay at her friend's house, and I said okay. Then the next day, she came in and said that I don't care for her when I didn't come get her at 3 a.m. while she was playing bingo because she was losing. No call or text, nothing. She expected me to just drive up for no reason. So yeah, my story. This will also double as an AITA post because I feel bad for not making her food, as she is my mom. Just from what OP presented here, if that's basically the gist of everything, then I think the mom is crazy rude and unappreciative of the situation that she's allowed in. And also, yes, very incredibly entitled because they assume that because they gave birth to you, a choice and a decision that you had no say in, that they somehow deserve the right to just own everything you earn? That makes zero sense, and I think it would be the best if she leaves that house and goes figuring out living somewhere else. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. If you want to hear another entitled parent story that was even more insane than any of the ones in this video, click on that left video, or if you missed my latest video, click on the right. But with that said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.